Hello, everybody. How are you? Can you hear me at the back? Can you see me? Would you prefer to see, like, not my... I brought my notes today and nearly got them mixed up with the shopping list that's must buy mushrooms. Useless at a conference, but mushrooms are good for you. So, when John and I were talking about what to speak about at the conference today, we really started out talking about media technology. I write the official book on Adobe Premiere Pro. I record some of the official video training for Avid Media Composer, write the book on Edius, 1,800 tutorials on post-production. So if anyone's stuck editing something, I can pretend I know what I'm talking about. You would be amazed how often, while I'm recording, I shouldn't say this on mic, while I'm recording a tutorial on how to do something in post-production, I will often end up pausing the recording mid-sentence, realizing I don't actually know how to do this. Google it, find my own tutorial from a year ago. Oh, that's right, okay, and then unpause it. So I've gotten very good at repeating the beginning of the sentence in my mind so that I can finish it. And it seems like I know what I'm talking about. But we got to talking about decision-making. And as a conference for new leaders, you may not realize that one day you might well become a leader. In fact, you are a leader already when you are deciding where to go to eat lunch, or what to wear, and how you're going to behave, how your actions are going to influence other people. Every single thing that you do causes ripples of change all around you. The way you sit, the way you walk in a room, whether you look someone in the eye when you shake hands with them, whether you're patient when people are trying to explain things to you. Years ago, I went to 2 film schools, and the second film school, I paid my way by working for Microsoft, doing tech support. And what I learned when I was doing tech support, I ended up doing 3rd-level tech support for a company called 3Com, making modems and internet devices and that sort of thing. And what I learned from 3rd-level support, by the way, when someone gets through to 3rd-level support, they're having a religious experience now. They probably need an exorcist. And they'd call up and they'd be saying, my computer's trying to kill me, and I ran out of holy water, what do I do? And I developed what I used to call, and some of you are maybe a bit too young to remember this, what I used to call my George Clooney doctor's voice. So I would say, don't you worry about a thing. I've got this. It's going to be okay. I'm going to fix your computer. Just relax. I had 2 proposals of marriage. I had a book sent. But what I learned is that when you're working in tech support, and everybody who's working in engineering, how many people would say that they're doing engineering stuff? And great. And who would say they're doing more kind of design stuff? Okay, we'll hang out later. Okay, right. So when you're working in engineering and you know that there's a technical problem, what you want to do is be as helpful as you possibly can. And so when someone gives you the error message, and you know that error message, you hear the first few words, and you say, let me stop you right there. I know the problem. Let me fix it for you. And you're saying that because you want to be as helpful as you possibly can. But it's not going to work. They're not going to let you help them. And the reason they're not going to let you help them is that they're not convinced you understand the problem. The first thing somebody needs when they have a problem is not a solution. I just want to say that again because it's craziness. When someone has a problem, you think they need a solution first. They don't. The first thing they need is to be heard. Now, communication is the responsibility of the speaker, not the listener. If you're conveying information to somebody, it's up to you to make sure that they've heard you and understand what you're saying, not the listener. And if you want to be understood well, then get into the habit of using the lexicon, the language that people use generally to speak. So if someone says my vehicle instead of my car, then you use the word vehicle, because people tend to hear the way they speak. So what I discovered is that it's not enough to hear somebody. I have to convince them that I've heard them, which is a very different thing. Because saying to somebody 3 words into the error message, cannot open DLL, no, let me stop you, I know what it is. No, they won't believe you. So actually, there's a more subtle second part to being understood, which is that when someone hears you, when you communicate with them, when you say something to them, what you're doing is reshaping their beliefs. You may have faith that there is a God, but you believe you're sitting in a room listening to me speaking right now. There's a difference. Your beliefs are your entire worldview. You believe it's a good idea to wear shoes. Do you like my shoes, by the way? They're very shiny. I was told that shiny shoes are better, so I know nothing about that stuff. So when you communicate something, and the BBC's charter is to inform, educate, and entertain, in that order of priority. When you inform somebody and you educate somebody, and hopefully in an entertaining way, because entertaining stuff is engaging and it connects with people, you change them. They become a different being. Because in many ways, your beliefs about what the world is and how the world works and what you are as a human being and what it means to be a human being, those beliefs are, I have to point because they said that Spielberg says that when people take photographs, pointing makes you look important. I'm inspired. That's my inspired face. So, sorry. So I'll be really subtle. I'll come in. Nobody will see me. So every single thing that you do will change every person you interact with in such a way that their beliefs about who they are and how their world works, how physics works, how all of that stuff is changed by interaction with them. Doesn't that make you powerful? I have 3 hats. I'm a director. I've directed about 30 short films, writer-director. I do all the media technology stuff, and I consult for a few companies as a futurist. And as a futurist, my goal is to look at trends and say what and when. So I can give you an estimate for when self-driving cars will be on the streets. We pretty much know. But I can also give you an estimate for when governments will start saying we can't justify allowing human drivers anymore. It's too dangerous. I'm going today with about 17 years. So my interest in futurism isn't really in buttons that go woo. Have you heard that phrase? You press a button, like you put congratulations into Facebook now and all the balloons come up. It's kind of cool. It doesn't do anything. It's kind of cool, but so what? My interest is in the human condition. My interest is in what it means to be alive and how your environment shapes you. And as the leaders of tomorrow, you will be shaping the lives of people. And so I had these notes, which I had my handwriting analyzed once by a handwriting analyst. And they took my notes, and they literally went, and handed it back. And they just said, good luck. So I got my notes here, and I made a note to remind myself that there is a Q&A. And so what's going to happen is this plane flight, and I filmed this from an airplane window, is going to land. And when it lands, that's the cue for me to do the Q&A. So I want you to be thinking about questions, please. The more challenging, the better. I have $1 in cash left in my wallet that I'll pay for the most challenging question. But I wrote down here that, the topics that we were going to be talking about is volition, coercion, and decision-making. I would argue that the degree to which you have volition, that's your capacity to make decisions, not necessarily the power to act upon them, but the capacity to reflect upon the information available to you and make decisions about it, is the degree to which you have personhood status. We don't yet have genuinely self-aware AI. I have a model for what would make genuinely self-aware AI, and I absolutely will not share it with anyone, because I ran it by a few futurist friends, and they said the world is not ready, because that definitely would work. And it's one of those ideas that's like the plastic on the end of the shoelaces. If I tell you, you're all going to say, oh, of course. It's based on a model for human consciousness that It's a biological model for consciousness that we're not ready. Because if we have self-aware AI, then we might have to say that it has volition. It has a subconscious and a conscious mind. You have that. But the question is, how much volition do you have? How well do you know yourself? Who are you? What are you? Where are you? I'm going to terribly paraphrase Freud, who pretty much argued that sanity means acting normal amongst the normal people. That means if you're able to observe your environment and moderate your behavior and change the way you act in response to what's going on around you, you're probably sane. You might think you're a dragon from Mars, but as long as you don't tell anybody, they never know, you're sane. Actually, one of the first indicators that you're not sane is that you stop worrying if you're mad. Did you know that? I'm guessing maybe one or two of you is sure that you're sane. Get it checked out. But everybody else, you think, oh, you know, I'm a bit crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. Can you observe with deep reality tone your environment, the people with you? A lot of people say communication is about good listening. It's a terrible misphrase in my point of view. It's not about listening. It's about apprehending. That's the difference between hearing and listening, right? Listening is apprehending what you're hearing. It's an active process. But really, when people say listen better, they don't mean listen. They mean observe, reflect, think about, acknowledge. I'm an optimistic realist, which means I'm primarily a realist. And I think reality is far more beautiful than any imagining of it that we might have. And when it thinks that life is bad, it seems like life is bad, and you think that you're having a hard time, if you step back and reflect upon the fact, I can't make sentences, I should have had a second coffee. If you step back and reflect upon the fact that the chances of you existing by any standard scientific model are zero, that every planet we found to date is utterly barren, that you can taste and smell and see and hear, and not only can you hear, you can understand melody and music and rhythm. And when you hear music, do you know if you listen to music that's faster than 60 beats a minute, your heart rate goes up. There's nothing you can do about it. Slower than 60 beats a minute, your heart rate goes down. This is why music in film tells you how to feel, it makes you feel, which is why you can have someone walking along in a park in a film and the music's going, I can't sing. It's scary music. Just imagine scary music. And, and you feel concern, you feel tension, you feel panic. Change that music to some happy-go-lucky children's nursery, well, it depends on the nursery rhyme, but change that to some happy-go-lucky music, and now you've got very relaxed time in a park. The visuals are the same. The music makes you feel. In fact, I just made you feel something. I told you to imagine scary music. About 60% of you who can imagine auditorily heard scary music in your heads. Aren't words powerful? I have mentored a lot of newcomers to the film industry, and I've worked with women in film as an organization. I've mentored and emceed panels. And one of the things I found, particularly for young women, so this is for the young women, but actually, you know what? It's for everybody. If you feel that you don't have power, you're just not observing properly. Every word you say changes the listener. Every time you describe something, they experience what you describe. Your words are powerful, and you don't need to justify it. You don't need credentials. You don't need anybody to validate for you. Truth speaks for itself. So how do you arrive at a point where what you're saying is true? I think it's by a deep acknowledgement of your subjectivity. We are subjective beings. There's nothing we can do about it. Existentialists argued that because we don't know what we're doing, there's this fear that you might get it wrong. a lot of you are engineers, so you get a brief from the client. Your goal is to accurately fulfill the brief. Make sure the brief happens. But what if the brief sucks? So let's imagine that the brief is, we want you to show these new sneakers in a way that is awesome. And you say, thank you very much for that, fantastic, but you always want to please the client, right? So that brief was great. I really love working with you, and I'm looking forward to future, times working together. What if you could just clarify for me, for you personally, what the word awesome means in this context? Because, the word awesome is literally the sensation you're supposed to experience when you come face to face, literally with God. That's what the word actually means. And there's a great British comedian, Eddie Izzard, who has this sketch about, check out Eddie Izzard, he's brilliant. And he's talking about awesome hot dogs. And he's saying, I cannot stand the amazing hot dogs. I might die with the amazingness of the hot dogs. So we've kind of corrupted the word a little bit. So you ask the client, you say, I just want some clarity because I want to make sure I really hit the brief for you. I'm seeing smiles here. Everyone's had this experience with briefs. And your client writes back and they say, thanks for your email. We're looking forward to working together as well. We think the brief's quite clear. And we're just looking forward to what you produce. We have great faith in you. And good luck. And now, so what you do is you talk to your friends and you say, I already hate my client. I've rewritten my reply 5 times because the first one was not cool. And my advice about that, by the way, is to clear the to line, clear it. Delete the to line in the email. Write anything you want, anything at all, and then delete the email. Remember to clear the to line before you type the email. Caught out by that as well. It's the face of experience. So here's the thing. If your client says to you, we're not going to clarify, and whatever you do is right, then whatever you do is right. And by the way, if they change their minds, you get to bill them for that, just so you know. Because I know a lot of people, they get nervous about, it's kind of completely different to what we agreed, but don't worry, I'll do it anyway. No, you get to bill for that. That's what terms and conditions are for. So how does that relate to life? I think life is the ultimate bad brief. We all keep asking, so why am I here exactly? I think I might be here for French cheese. Have you been to France? Because I suspect that my existence hangs in the balance with French cheese and great coffee. I don't have a time zone, so I need the coffee. Life is the ultimate bad brief. You don't know who you are, or what you are, or why you're here, who you're going to become, why things happen. All you know is that you exist. So what do you have control over? What makes actions apt? What makes them suitable? And I think the answer is to mean it. Just mean it. I think postmodernism has a lot to answer for, by the way. So let's not be postmodern. That's cynical, I thought I looked good, but obviously I'm just being, sarcastic. No, mean it. Be you meaning it. I think that the existentialists, a lot of them had funny beards. They looked a bit funny. I just don't think they got out enough. I think if they did, they would have had existential joy. Because if you cannot know that you're doing it right, logically, you cannot know that you're doing it wrong. And we've had some wonderful talks about career progression and how we've had some wonderful conversations also off the stages about stuff that happens to you that you didn't even realize later was going to be incredibly important. I was saying before, actually, a lot of my career as a futurist, as a technologist, is because my mother, true story, said, unless you answer this ad in the local paper, £5 an hour telephone work, no cold calling, training provided, I'm kicking you out of the house. Now, I felt that my mother wasn't being as maternal as I hoped that she might be. Turned out to be a great gig. I was working for American Express. They had very heavy emphasis on training. I had training in negotiation technique. Somewhere in a box, I have a certificate of telephone technique. And having worked in a call center now, I'm very nice to people in call centers. So my friends, when they hear me on a call, to a call center, I used to train people in the end. My friends say, you give really good telephone. You're really good. Because I'll say to the person, okay, listen, here's the problem. Here's what I think you need to do about it. Here's the information you're going to need. I'm happy to go on hold. And you can hear the person say, yes, actually, that's perfect. Thank you very much. I'll be right back. That job, in the meantime, I learned Tai Chi. I became a Tai Chi Chuan instructor. So if anyone wants to learn how to fight really slowly, you need very strong hands for Tai Chi. So my party trick is a fingertip handstand, which is useless in combat, but I'm pretty sure that if I was mugged and I did a fingertip handstand, the mugger would be so impressed, they'd be like, you know what? Here's $5. I'm out, have my gun. So, because I got nothing on that. I can play a banjo. So, I ended up teaching Tai Chi, and then I ended up, one of my students worked for Microsoft, and that got me a job at Microsoft. I was working 11 hours Saturday and 11 hours Sunday for most of my degree. 22 hours every weekend, doing tech support for Microsoft. One of the best jobs I ever had. And any of you who are going into management, check out the Swedish approach to management. The entire department was Swedish. 50% of my job interview was, why should we hire you? 50% was, why should you want to work for us? And they honored that balance the entire time I worked for them. I worked in call centers for a couple of years, 2-3 years. And it's the only time I've ever seen people cut their breaks short if it was busy to help out. Anyone worked in a call center? I think everyone should have to at some point. It's a certain kind of hell. It's unique. In China, they have lots and lots of hells, thousands of hells. I really believe that they had a call center in the book, but it was so far back in time, nobody knew what it was yet. So they were like, let's get rid of that. What does this mean? Sitting at a desk with people, what is a telephone? We'll cut that one out. But it gives you deep empathy, deep sympathy for people working in a public-facing role, because it's never their fault, just so you know. So volition is your capacity to reflect upon what is true in the context of your nature, the truest version of yourself, and to respond to that truth as you perceive it, knowing that you are subjective and therefore may be deeply wrong, reflecting upon that with the humility to know that everything about your opinions, about your sense of self, about your worldview, and about the information that you believe is true, because that's the delusion of subjectivity, is that what we perceive, we accidentally think is objectively true. That's the delusion. In the context of all of that, you make a choice. Now, if you can't think clearly, if you don't know yourself, more importantly, if you're not at peace with yourself, if you're unable to perceive what's going on around you, how effective is your volition going to be? How well can you be sure that you're making a decision? One of the moments they say, what's his name now? There's a very famous guru of media technology gave a speech where he was saying the moment you know you're a media technology guru, or any kind of guru, is the point at which you start saying, I don't know. And the reason is that you're so confident about what you do know and about your value as a human being that it's okay to say you don't know everything. It's okay. A lot of people starting out in their careers wonder, why should anybody hire me? Why should anybody want me? What value do I have? Well, it turns out that every single person in the world has a unique combination of nature and nurture, a unique perspective that cannot be repeated in any other person in the world, which means that you are unique and therefore, by definition, perfect. You're welcome. How cool is that? There is only one ocean. It can, therefore, only be perfect. So I argue for existential joy, take the risk. Get hurt. Fall down. Fail. As long as you weren't pretending to be something you're not. How could you ever be judged for that if you meant it? The problem is that we're under a lot of pressure. So volition is making choices. Coercion is an influence, an external influence. Now, if you look at our judicial system, I'm British. I've been here for a few weeks now, and my accent is slipping. And it's very embarrassing because when I go back to London, Londoners say, "Are you from Australia?" Now, I think Australians are great, and I think Australia is great. But I'm like, no, I was born in East London. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Oh, right, okay. So you're French? No. In Britain and in America, which are the two cultures I'm the most familiar with, anywhere in Western Europe, most places in the world where there is a fully formed judicial system, the law is based on reasonableness, which is a beautiful word because it has no intrinsic meaning, but it's sort of like, balancing, It's not too much of anything. It's probably reasonable. Now, there is the fallacy of the excluded middle in logical arguments. There's an amazing book written in the 50s by a guy called, I think it's Robert Tools. He was a logician, and he wrote a book called Straight and Crooked Thinking. I highly recommend it. Phenomenal book, where he describes the 30 or so ways in which people argue crookedly and persuade you to think in ways that are not true. Life-changing book. Another life-changing book is The System of Nonviolent Communication. Phenomenal, life-changing book that shows you that you don't communicate the right way. You think you do, but 3 chapters in, you're thinking, wow, I suck. I inflict a lot of things on people. But if you look at the punishments meted out by the judicial systems around the world, the degree of punishment is really commensurate with the level of coercion. How severely were you coerced by the person that inflicted something upon you? So if somebody comes up to you in the street and randomly punches you in the face, and I can tell you as a martial artist, getting punched in the face is not cool. I mean, punching other people in the face is uncool, but getting punched in the face. So when I was teaching regularly, I would always say the number one skill, the number one technique, if you study a martial art that you need to be absolutely amazing at, is running away. If you can possibly run away, that's absolutely better than any other technique you can possibly learn. I highly recommend it. But it's good. And by the way, the second technique is that if they corner you, apologize convincingly. Doesn't matter. I'm so sorry. I'm not quite sure what I did wrong, but I'm definitely in the wrong. And I'm really, really sorry. And then when you learn martial arts, you learn how to take a blow, right? Somebody punches you, and you roll with the blow. And in Tai Chi, it's a very close martial art, so you want the skin to just brush against your cheek, because then you know where your opponent is without looking, and you do some awesome stuff, and they fall down, and sure you want to, you do your James Bond bit, Shall we dance again? So, hasn't, oh, thank you. They're still holding out hope I'll play that role one day. So, and if you've tried those 3 and it doesn't work, now you're allowed to hit people. That was my rule. But if somebody comes up in the street and punches you in the face, that is a lot of coercion, right? I mean, if you look at the coercionness scale, being punched in the face has got to be way up the list of coercionness, right? On the coercionometer, you're way over here, because I don't know about you, but there's a lot of things I would choose over being punched in the face. Like wearing yesterday's socks, way down the line. It's nowhere near. So if somebody punches you in the face and they get arrested, they get a pretty severe punishment. The problem that we have in today's culture is, if you think about what I said about volition, about making choices, which, again, in terms of society, is the degree to which you have personhood status. I really would like you to think about that. Because it doesn't matter whether you're free to act. What matters is that you intend to. I'm going to misremember. You studied the classics better in the US than we do in the UK. Who was it that stole fire from the gods? Prometheus? No, was it Prometheus? Is it Prometheus that was forced to push the boulder up? Sisyphus. Right. What did Sisyphus do?
He killed travelers and such that came to his kingdom.
He did what?
So he was forced to.
So I think that, that I thought it was something really severe, like putting the milk in before the tea. I thought it was like, it's just heathens. Heathens do that. Unless you know the pot and the tea, in which case, it's okay. You're just showing off if you do it then. So Sisyphus put the milk in before the tea, and the gods were like, okay, you're going to suffer for that. and made Sisyphus roll this boulder up a hill for eternity, which I thought was pretty severe, But there's a philosophical conundrum, and the question is, would it have been a greater punishment if Sisyphus knew he was being punished, or if the gods so made it that he did not know he was being punished, that he believed that it was his nature to push the boulder up the hill? And most philosophers agree that taking away self-knowledge is a greater punishment, because in doing so, they take away his humanity. This is the red pill and the blue pill in The Matrix. I know it's an old movie now. Has anyone not seen The Matrix? I was riding on the roof of a bus in India, because you're allowed. And I was waving at some kids, true story, I was waving at some kids behind us. And the father's a family, the father's driving the car, and he's looking at me, and everybody's all smiling, and then he went like this. And I thought, that's a bad sign. It's not good. And I span around, and there was a telegraph wire at neck height coming at me at whatever speed the bus was going. It's pretty awesome. Sorry, hang on a minute. Listen, never ever ride on the roof of a bus. I am not responsible for your actions. It was very foolish. I'm not going to tell you how much fun it was. So the wire comes along the road, and I tried to do the Matrix thing. You've got to have seen the video. Like the guy comes back like this, And I nearly did it. Bus goes over a bump, and I just, boom, hit the roof of the bus. And watched the wire, the cable, go over my face like this. And I thought that was nearly a cool story, but instead I just looked like an idiot. But I did live. I think that the wire would have twanged me onto the car, and you never know. It might have been, physics could have been just perfect. Physics permits me to have landed on my feet on the car. And then there would have been a moment between me and the driver where we would have been, wow, that was, don't know how I'd feel about that. And I'd be saying, speed up a little bit because I need to get back on the bus because I've got to get to where I'm going. But it didn't happen. But you just imagined it because I described it to you. And what I just did is paint a picture that was silly, silly, or I'm telling you it's true, might not be. And in painting that picture, I contextualized something for you. I changed you. I hope that the way I changed you was benign, but I can't be sure. Because you don't know what the bus looked like. You don't know that we'd been going, this was awesome. We were going up hairpin bends. The driver never said they were going to do hairpin bends on the way. So we're sliding from one side of the roof to the other. We thought it was great. We're a bit too young to care about dying, which you should definitely care about. Very important. So what I did is I impacted your volition. I coerced you into thinking something, into feeling something. I changed you. Now, I spent years and years struggling with the concept of individual free will. Yeah, I'll tell you my conclusion. I was thinking I don't want to influence your free will by telling you what I thought, but what the hell? I ended up concluding that the problem with the concept of free will is that we don't really know what the word I means. And if you look at what philosophers say about making choices and free will, they all argue based on different meanings of I. Do you mean your consciousness? That's usually what we mean. Do you mean your total mind? Do you mean your subconscious? Do you mean you as a mechanistically driven bunch of fundamental forces, fluctuating fields of weak and strong nuclear forces popping in and out of existence at a submolecular level that are probably quantum effects, but for all we know, it's also still mechanistic. And then that builds and builds and builds into a complex macrocosmic system. And then you saw that cartoon yesterday where the duck did that funny thing. Did you know ducks are technically the funniest animal? Did you know? They did a study. And they found that ducks are the funniest. The joke, so they get two animals standing near a pond, and one turns to the other, it's cold, and says, "It's chilly today, isn't it?" And the other one turns to the other and says, "Oh my God, a talking duck." And so they test it. That's the joke. See, they test, and it's funnier with ducks than any other animal. So you saw that thing yesterday, or you heard me speaking about ducks, and that changed your opinions, and that had an impact based on your experience and your nurture. And if you had a machine capable of calculating it, you would know the decision that you would make, and therefore there is no free will if you live in a mechanistic universe. It's not quite predeterminism, but it's pretty much there. Is it? And so what I realized is that we cannot speculate about true individual free will, but maybe we can collectively. But I struggled with this concept of free will for years and years because I wasn't sure if I was making apt decisions. And what I realized is I can never know. And I made peace with never knowing. But what I can know is that I intend to. Do you intend to do the right thing? Do you intend kindness? In our culture, we don't speak enough about words like care. It becomes transactional. Or this person did this thing and it was really good of them, and so it makes them look important. Celebrities do things for charity, but they're really doing it for exposure. And so it becomes important for you to show that you're a good person. And actually, an old psychologist friend of mine used to say that in any social group, because we have a tendency to imagine the worst possible explanation for anything that happens, it prepares us for it. And so if you're in a group and it's possible that someone won't know why you did something, you have a duty to the group not just to be good, but to show that you're good. That's not the same as bragging. But do overshare, do over-communicate. Tell people, yeah, just so everybody knows, I made sure that we had coffees for tomorrow. So nobody needs to worry about it, just so they're informed. Empower other people by giving them the information with which they can make decisions. We live in a culture where we believe that withholding information and keeping your cards close to your chest gives you power. The opposite is true. The more you empower others with information, the more valuable you become, the more influential you become. And as a futurist, I forecast that our future currency will not be monetary. It will be measurable influence. Do you become influential by siloing your knowledge? By restricting your kindness? By restricting your giving? No. You become influential by being participatory, by giving of your time, by sharing, by listening, by letting people feel heard. So how did I get to that? So I hope someone was taking notes, because it does. It leads to success of the group. And actually, it's not really the subject of this presentation, but if you look at every single major achievement of our species, every single major achievement is a group effort. And it is so fundamental to our nature to collaborate that our social media, our media in general, promotes competition in order that we feel competitive with one another, and we want to have that better car or those nicer shoes. I just want to remind you that these shoes are pretty awesome. You want to be better than somebody because competition is good and healthy and positive, but it is not the most fundamental characteristic. Helping other people is. The gurus say that the fulfillment of human potential is always, always, always in the service of others, which is not the same thing as putting yourself second. Sometimes you serve others best by putting yourself first. How can you tell? Do you mean it? That's how you can tell. You can never be sure that you've made the right decision because you're subjective. And I would argue that subjective truth and objective truth are not mutually exclusive. They're both true. They're just different forms of truth. I might believe there is a small leopard in front of me instead of that TV screen. Now, I truly experience a small leopard. Always wanted to have a big cat as a pet. I know it's illegal and everything, but, just thought it'd be awesome when I was a kid. But objectively, there is a TV screen. Is my experience valid? 100%. Is it objectively true? No. When you raise your voice and someone says, you're being aggressive, are you being aggressive? No. Are they experiencing you being aggressive? 100%. Who's responsible? Do you express your anger best by being emotionally coercive? By using emotions to inflict your opinions upon people with that emotional charge, that punch, in addition to the words? Or do you express your anger best by very clearly, with great lucidity, expressing your concern and what you're upset about? Turns out that when you get angry and upset, there's nothing you can do about it. You experience it. You experience your emotions. You don't choose them. What you choose is what you do about your emotions. Turns out it takes about 25 minutes for the neurotransmitters to flush through your brain. Did you know that when you cry, your tears wash the neurotransmitters out of your brain? Isn't that amazing? Sorry, guys, we're kind of stuck. Because in our culture, we're taught as a man, you should feel the pain, but it's manly not to cry. It's nonsense. I would always say real men cry because fake ones, they don't have the tear ducts. And wait, because when the robots come, you'll be pinching them, they're like, nothing. I got nothing. Artificial tissue, nothing. So, take 25 minutes. Be realistic about your subjectivity. Know that you're going to feel something, and those feelings are not your responsibility. They're something you're experiencing, and you have every right to that experience. But just because you're feeling something, it doesn't mean you should inflict it upon others. So now the plane is landing. Wasn't that beautiful? You can't really see it. It looks great on here, by the way. The color's great. So I wanted to say a couple of key things. Kindness is not the same as compassion or empathy. It's a very important word. To be kind is to do the right thing for the other, whether or not it serves you. That's kindness. You don't need compassion, although compassion often leads to kindness. And empathy often leads to compassion, mutual identification with the other. If you recognize that we're all in this together, that just as you don't know what you're doing or where you're going or what's going on, by the way, I'm probably older than most of you, I'm still winging it. Nobody has a clue. And anybody that tells you they're not winging it hasn't realized they're winging it. They just don't know. They just haven't realized it. The question is whether you trust not your ability, not your strength, not even your wisdom. Do you trust your integrity? Do you intend to be kind? Do you intend to be good? Now, when somebody gives you advice, there's a key phrase that's incredibly valuable. And the phrase is, why would this person tell me this thing now? Why would this person, this one in particular, tell me as they perceive me? Who are they, and who do they think I am? And why would they, thinking they are this person and thinking I am this person, tell me this particular thing? What do they mean by it? Not what do I think they mean, what do they mean by it? And why in this moment? Because it's great to receive advice, but sometimes people have an agenda. Sometimes people will raise you up in ways that make you uncomfortable in order to make you separate, to segregate you. Sometimes they really mean it. And all of that's just them doing their best. All of that is them winging it too. But if you're aware, if you're a realist, if you acknowledge your subjectivity, you can reflect upon the context in which you were given that advice. Or when something happens to you, like a person punches you in the street. Has anyone heard of dyspraxia? It's a condition where you don't have total control over your body. If someone with dyspraxia unintentionally punches you in the face, should you be angry with them? Probably not. Until you know why something happened, it's a little too early to judge. Now, when I was a kid, the word why was banned at home for about 3 months. And you know, I kind of get why. I kind of do. But I just wanted to know why. And if you ask yourself why enough, why am I wearing these shoes? They're not super comfortable. Anybody super observant would have seen me yesterday wearing my, what do you call them here, sneakers. But someone said they would look cool, and I trusted them, so here I am. But if you ask yourself why, like, why did I trust that person? Well, I've known them for a long time, and they seem to have a lot of integrity. Why did you think that they had all that integrity? Well, this thing happened. Why does that thing indicate to you that that means integrity? And why? If you ask why enough, every single decision will eventually end up as being because I feel it. All of your decisions are rooted in feelings. And you know, actually, you know what? It comes down to just two. Love or fear. Every single time. And love is infinite and abundant. It never runs out. You will never, ever run out of creativity. You will never run out of kindness. When someone is hurting, even if you know they're in the wrong, it will never cost you anything to give them a shoulder or hold their hand or remind them that they're not alone. You're never alone. Any physics fans, you know, it's one cohesive system. It's pretty awesome. All this stuff interacting, it's awesome. The love that you have is a fundamental force that you might well be made from. It will never run out. You can give it away infinitely. And it's not afraid. And it cannot be harmed. The core of you can never be harmed. The real you. The Zen philosophers say that the you, the real you, is not the thinker. It's not the person calculating stuff. But we tend to identify with the thinker. We tend to think that if I get a problem to solve and I think through the problem, the thinker is me. That's me thinking through the problem. But no, the Zen philosophers say that that's a part of you. It's a mechanism, like the part of the brain that converts ideas into language. It's a part of you. The idea is you, not the words. The Zen philosophers say the part of you that is able to look at the self, to observe the self, and think, oh, this is me thinking. Or this is me having a really horrible situation. Or this is me realizing that nobody's as impressed by my shoes as I am. Or whatever the thing is, the observer is the self. And if you identify with the observer, you discover that that part of you, that being, isn't afraid of anything. Everything is a cost-benefit analysis. Everything is an experience. It doesn't really have many opinions. It's fascinating. But fear has boundaries. Fear can be threatened. Fear needs a sense of self that is me and not me. Fear doesn't allow you to identify with other people. And by identify, I don't mean sympathize. Sympathizing is feeling what you think the other person is feeling. That's sympathy. No help to anyone. I used to have a friend where if I was upset about something, he would be so much more upset than I was, I'd have to console him. This is no help at all. Empathy is literally feeling what the other person is feeling. And that's helpful. That really matters. And coincidentally, you know, they say there are ways to show that you're listening. It turns out, there's a lovely TED talk about this, it turns out that if you are actually listening, you don't need to worry about whether you're giving listening signals. We all had that thing where you're on the phone and the person's talking and you're going, while you're on Instagram. You know, yeah, And then you say, at the wrong time. And they say, what do you mean? We used to have this problem in a call center because we used to play Minesweeper a lot. And you could tell, sorry, I shouldn't admit this on camera. It was a long time ago. But I had a customer once who called up, yeah, and I'm competing with my friend, because we used to do competitions, see who could get there fastest. And we're playing Minesweeper, and then I heard the voice of the person go up into a question, like, and they stopped talking. Oh, God, I didn't hear any of that. So I would say, this is what you do, is you say, well, just tell me again, but just break it down for me step by step so I can follow exactly what you're doing. And then I went back to playing Minesweeper. It was foolish, but after the third time of doing this, the person was just like, you're an idiot. I keep telling you what the problem is. And it didn't go well. I had to quit Minesweeper. And I lost the competition with my friend. So fear will make you feel smaller than or bigger than somebody else. It will make you feel vulnerable. It will make you feel like getting hurt is unacceptable. I would argue getting hurt is inevitable. It may be why we're here. Maybe. What a blessing, what a privilege to be able to feel sorrow. What a blessing to have lost love. What a blessing to fail and to learn from that failure and to become someone that does not fail. Because you were not that being beforehand. Through failure and learning from failure, you become a being that succeeds. What a blessing. But fear will tell you it's unacceptable. Fear will tell you that you are unacceptable as a person if you fail. And the beauty is that you get to choose. You don't get to choose whether you succeed or fail. You don't get to choose whether your kindness works or whether you're able to help another person or succeed in your aspirations. But you get to choose whether you care. And that is the root of apt action. Now I can tell, because I set this up to freeze frame when I'm supposed to shut up and do Q&A, and I'm way over. So, thank you very much. Let's do Q&A. You have a question? Do we have a mic? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let me remind everybody before you ask the questions, Maxim knows martial art and can do a perfect handstand.
I can do a one-handed handstand, but my balance isn't very good, so I fall over. It's impressive for 3 seconds.
I had a question.
Yeah.
What do you think leadership is?
I think there's a difference between leadership and management. I think that management is a service role, very clearly. Leadership, management is about serving others in such a way that you enable them to fulfill their potential. So you really need to be a good reader of people. You need to understand what they could be. And you might be wrong about that. But management is setting people exactly the right challenges and giving them exactly the right opportunities for them to self-realize. And that self-realization can change over time. As you grow and develop, you know, when I was a kid, I was super proud that I managed to swim 10 yards. Awesome. And then 25 yards. Amazing. And then when I did 100 yards, I took so long, the teacher literally said, you know, you should just stop. No, I'm going to do this. I was so bad at swimming, but I was going to do it. I'm a ridiculously stubborn person. So I think that management is simple, really. Find out what other people need and enable them to do it. And if you can get out of the way enough, then you're a great manager. But leadership is being it. Leadership, it's actually a misquote. Gandhi never said, be the change you want to see in the world. It was a misquote. He said something kind of similar. I think the misquote is better than what he said, actually. But he takes credit for the sentiment. He expressed the sentiment. Leadership is saying not, you should go up that hill. Leadership is saying, I am going up that hill. And having so much respect and understanding and connection with those people that you're leading, that whether you ask them to or not, they're coming with you. I think that's leadership. I'm probably wrong. My favorite book in the world is an American author, a guy called Richard Bach. Just phenomenal. He famously wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, beautiful book about striving and achieving more. But then he wrote Illusions. He said after Jonathan that he never wanted to write a book again. He hated writing books. But Illusions would break the walls of his mind down and demand to be written. And it's a beautiful philosophical book about why we're here and what to do about it. And basically he argues that souls choose to be here, and they're here to learn and have fun. It's pretty solid. And at the end of the book, it's a story where there is a book, and the book in the story has all this wisdom and knowledge and everything. And the last bit of the book, and I'm going to ruin it all for you now, but read the book, it's great, phenomenal. The last page of the book says, everything in this book might be wrong. It's very important to know that however sure you are, it's okay, you could be wrong. We had a question over here.
Yes, so you were talking about subjective truth and
Yes.
objective truth.
So, yep.
How does that apply to dreams? You can actually feel whenever you're dreaming, so I guess that's subjective, but I guess that's like nothing that happens in dreams is subjectively true, so.
Thank you for that awesome question.
$1.
I have a theory of consciousness. Actually, it's a film theory. I call it the thread of consciousness. I would argue that dream is consciousness unfettered by physics. I don't think human consciousness really understands time or space. I think that we have a linearity of experience. We have a concept of places other than this one. And we have a concept of times before and after this one. But in fact, our experience of consciousness is always in this moment. And everything else is speculation. We imagine the past. We imagine the future. As a great author, Eckhart Tolle, I never know whether it's Tolle or Tolle. It's T-O-L-L-E. He's a phenomenal Zen philosopher who argues that because the past and the future are unknown, and you cannot do anything there, the only moment that you're actually experiencing anything, the only moment that you're experiencing things and are an actor in the original sense of the word is this one. You should give at least 80% of your attention to this moment. And any actors in the room, or if you know any actors, I always say as a director, the most important thing is to be here now. But dream is consciousness without any of that linearity of experience. And what happens in a dream is you have this thread of curiosity. Something happens in the distance, and suddenly you're next to it. And it never occurs to you in a dream that you've passed over a distance or that time might have passed. You're just there, and it's unremarkable. And so I would argue that dream is an opportunity for your mind to explore subjective truth, but what you're really looking at is a mirror. So for example, mothers with new babies will very, very commonly have nightmares about killing their baby. It's very common and frightening, because obviously a mother with a new baby desperately wants to protect their baby. And it turns out that almost certainly this is their mind playing out every possible scenario that could happen in order to see the signs early enough and stop it happening. So you go for, let's say, for example, you were going to speak on stage at a major conference for future leaders. No pressure. That's live streamed. Hello, Mum. I hope my mum's watching. Hi, Mum. My mum's called Ellen. She's an artist. She's awesome. Check it out. I've never said hello, Mum, on stage before. That's kind of interesting. But if I were to have a dream the night before where I don't have any trousers, you call them pants here, don't you? Trousers. By the way, in Britain, the word pants exclusively means men's underwear. Which is why, if anybody American comes to London and says, so I can't even say it without laughing, I need to change my pants because they're dirty, it's always funny. Just so you know, that's why people are smiling. We want to be polite, but that's why people are smiling. But if I had a dream where I dreamt that I wasn't wearing any pants, it's not because I think I'm going to do it. It's because my brain is playing out all of these scenarios. It's part of that defense mechanism. It's part of that process. However, dream, it's like a whiteboard. It's an opportunity to play out ideas. And those ideas are true, not necessarily the manifestation of the ideas. That's why you can't kill an idea, because it is a pure truth. Yes? Okay.
Okay, so who is your favorite philosopher? Who has been the most influential philosopher? And finally, at what point in your career did you decide that you needed to be studying philosophy?
Wow. Wow. I'm going to go with Richard Bach. He's the philosopher who had the greatest impact on me. When I was 11 years old, I read Illusions. And at that point, I sort of felt like I understood technology. When it was my birthday, I would get things to take apart. I'd get 2 screwdrivers and a wrench, a spanner. And I remember the highlight of my birthdays was I got a gas meter to take apart. It was amazing. Covered the entire floor in pieces. And I figured, yeah, I get it. The square peg does go through the square hole, unless you really force it or reshape it. And I wanted to understand everything else. And I discovered this book, a short book, and it set me off on my spiritual journey. And it had to be a spiritual journey because it was metaphysical. I wanted to understand how the entire universe worked. And so I would say I read everything I could find on every esoteric system, on every belief system, every philosophical thing I could find, but never formally. I wanted to study philosophy at college, but my mother's boyfriend at the time said, no one will take you seriously as a filmmaker unless you go to film school, so you should go to film school. So I went to film school. And then I was heartbroken when I met a really successful filmmaker who had studied philosophy. Remember, why would this person say this thing to me now? So I wanted to understand how the universe worked. And after 20 years of study, I ended up being a Tai Chi master, a Reiki master, if anyone's ever heard of it. I got very good at napping. Meditating. I came to an interesting conclusion that I'll leave you with to think about. In ancient Greece, the mystery religions, the Gnostics, they said, as above, so below. The macrocosm is inside the microcosm. The outer world is inside of you. It's a very old concept. And in the West, we interpret this as meaning that your world is a reflection of you. And psychoanalytically, that works well. The way you behave elicits a different response. The way you treat people, your actions, your choices. Always, the life you live is a consequences of the choices you made. But I think they missed the point. I would argue that your universe is not a reflection of you. It literally is you. You exist in your imagination. Your perception of the universe is in your imagination. Your perception of yourself is in your imagination. And we're all bumping up against one another, experiencing life together. Isn't that beautiful? Together, always together. But I would argue that what you experience is literally you. They say in photography that a photograph of a landscape is a photograph of the photographer. It's a self-portrait. And in that sense, I would argue, your perception of your universe is really a perception of you. So, Richard Bach. Thank you very much. Thank you.